Hello everyone. It brings me immense delight to bring you this particular course of modern history. So, in the modern history course, we'll have a very crisp, comprehensive, and very objective study of modern history. Right? It does form a continuum between a medieval and the modern history, but yet we'll try to make sure that we cover a few of the backlinks that are enough for us to understand the modern history. Right? Let's start the topic. So the first theme is that we're going to start our session. We have divided the whole course into themes. The first theme is the European arrival in India and India in the 18th century. So the first session is historical context and the Portuguese in India. So if we look at the modern history, so the modern history can be divided into three broad categories, I'll say. First is the British conquest, how British conquest India. For example, the India must be having some other powers. So how the British won over them. Then it was not only these power, but some other European powers were there, which were also competing for the same space. So how British overcome those powers, for example, Portuguese, for example, French, for example, the Danes, for example, the Dutches, and going on. So how they conquest they have done. Then comes the question of the consolidation of the power. How they have consolidated that power. First you conquest anything, then how you consolidate your empire. It was unlike the medieval times when the plunderers used to come, loot India and go away. It was not like that. They came into India. Yes, they looted India, obviously. But they came to India, they looted India, but they established themselves in India. Then comes the next question of the administration. When you establish yourself, when you put yourself into another nation, you have to provide one administration. So what kind of an administration that they have provided? What were the British policies in India? More specifically, what was the impact of those policies on the people of India? How these policies have impacted India? And lastly, how the impact of the policy on the people and what sort of reactions have come from India. And obviously, as they have looted us, hence their policies will be very harsh, very adverse for the Indians, and hence the reaction was bound to come in one way or the other. We have a lot of reactions: civil rebellions, tribal revolts, a big rebellion in 1857. Then a whole Indian freedom struggle that started with your formation of Indian National Congress at a national level, then progress to extremist Swadeshi movement, then to Gandhian phase and going on. Right? And finally we became independent. So that is the whole arena that we have to cover in this modern history course. Coming to the next point, that is the first part. That is the British conquest part. So the British conquest, as we have seen, it has to be divided into two phases. First, so we have to drag the other European powers out. Because before British came to India, there have been the other power. For example, as we will see today, the Portuguese were already established in India. In some places, but they were in India. Along with that, there were many Indian powers were also there. For example, the Mughals were there. Then the later Mughals came, then some regional powers, Bengal, Mysore, Maratha, and so on. So they have to overcome them, And how they did it, how British conquest India, that will be the theme of our first theme. That is our first theme. Now, let's go back in the time. Obviously, we are going back into the time as we are reading the modern history. But let's go back to the time from this period going forward. Why the Europeans have come to India? Let's understand the very first question. Yes, we understood that British conquest with these powers. But why all these powers, British, Portuguese, Dutch, French, Danes, why they came to India? Right? And to understand that, let's go a bit behind. We won't going too much into history, but small chronology we will give. So there was a Roman Empire. You must have heard of it in movies, a lot of shows are made about the glory of the Roman Empire and all these things. So the Roman Empire lasted 27 BC to 7 it's 476 AD. You don't have to remember these figures. Don't remember these figures. Okay, I will tell you what is important, huh? These are for your understanding. And the peak of the Roman Empire was in 117 AD. Then the Roman Empire was divided into a western and the eastern flank because of the huge Roman Empire. We'll see the maps as well. Because the Roman Empire was huge, so it was divided into western and the eastern part. The western part got disintegrated very quickly, but the eastern part survived. In bits and pieces, it survived till 1453. Then came the very seminal moment in the history of the world, I will say. That is the fall of the Constantinople. That was a very seminal moment. We'll discuss. Then, from the eastern Roman Empire came the Ottomans. So the rise of the Ottomans can be seen around 1300. And from when the fall of the Constantinople happened, when the Eastern Roman Empire fell, then came the Ottoman Empire. We don't have to read this even in modern world history. So it's not in our course actually, but just to give you some background and make you understand. Then the Ottoman Empire rose, and finally the Ottoman Empire came to an end in the at the end of the World War I, and that you must have read in the world history, or will read in the going forward. So the World War I has brought an end to an Ottoman Empire. That ended the Caliphate, that led to the beginning of the Mustafa Kemal Pasha in Turkey, right, who established a secular constitution, a secular Turkey, right. Now, let's start from the Roman Empire. So as I've said, the Roman Empire was a peak at 117 AD. The capital was the Rome in Italy. You can see the extent of the Roman Empire, very huge empire. And more importantly, they sit at a very, very critical juncture. Very critical juncture, Mediterranean Sea, right? Black Sea. You can see these places. Sea of Marmara. Sorry. Atlantic here. Strait of Gibraltar. Then the empire got disintegrated into eastern and the western flank. They have to shift their capital also from Rome to this Byzantia, and this will in the future will be known as the Constantinople. And the Constantinople in the future will be known as the Istanbul that we see today. And that is why Istanbul is a very, very, very multicultural city, because the city has seen a lot of things. Roman Empire, then Ottomans, now also very multicultural city in Turkey. So now the Roman Empire is divided into the western and the eastern flank because it became so huge. You can imagine that. Now the western flank got disintegrated very quickly. Right? How the empires fell, everybody knows. Disintegration, fight, conflict, lack of administration, lack of able leadership, and all these things. We don't have to go into it. I'm just giving you a context. So this became the Roman Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire. Slowly, it also got disintegrated. Small resistance came and all these things. Finally, in 1400s, you can see only the last remains of the Roman Empire, Eastern Roman Empire in these things. Right? So that was the last remaining bastion of the Roman Empire. And finally, in 1453, what was taken? The Ottoman empires have taken over the Constantinople. And that's from that period, the Ottoman Empire rose like anything. Okay. Now the Constantinople fell to Ottoman Empire, and the Ottoman Empire grew like anything, as we've discussed, from 1300 onwards to the 1922, when it fell finally in the World War I. So this is some historic background to this situation. Now you can see these are the Ottomans which are controlling very important routes. So this is your 1683 Ottoman Empire. Now these are the Ottoman Empire. You can see this is the Ottoman Empire, and they are controlling very important routes. That is the spice routes, the trade routes that they are controlling. Now anyone sitting in the Europe, firstly, the Ottomans, before the Ottomans, they have the authority. They can have this trade, that they were having this trade with Arabia, with Persia. The silk trade was going on, old trades. But when the Ottomans have came in between, they became an intermediary. right? And because of which the trade of the Europeans suffered. Now came the time that they have to search for an alternative route, because these routes were dominated by the Ottomans, and Ottomans were the Muslims, right? We need to have very layman understanding. In the modern history, we need to focus upon the story part, है ना? We need to lay the groundwork of the story. If you understand the story well, everything is fine. Now the trade route was blocked, and these were Muslims. The Europeans was Christians, so there was a religious angle to conflict as well. We will see how later on. So religious conflict, religious question was also involved in this particular situation. Now they have to search for an alternative routes. From Europe, they have to go for an alternative route to reach India. That is the spices or the spice islands, these places. Okay, so these were the situation. Now when this was happening with the Roman and the Ottoman Empire, what was happening in the Europe, Western Europe? This was happening. It was an age of Renaissance and Reformation that was happening in the Western Europe, that you must have read in the world history, or you will read in your world history. Reformation, Renaissance, and all these things you will read. Hence, the age of the Renaissance and Reformation led for the search for the trade routes, and that gave rise to colonialism as well as the Industrial Revolution, and that led the course for the colonialism and imperialism, right? Now comes the question, finally, let us summarize what we have read, that why Europeans came to India. The first point, that is the Black Disease. Now, Black Disease again became famous in the current time, bubonic plague, because of the coronavirus pandemic. A lot of people died in this particular disease. Before the period of Renaissance, what was the system that was there in Europe? That was the feudal system. Feudal system, you can imagine if you have seen the Game of Thrones. So there is one king, then there is nobles, and then the peasants are there, right? So there is one king, noble, and peasants. They pay tribute to him, they pay tribute to him, like it. Very layman language I'm explaining. So the feudal system was there. But the Black Disease wiped out around more than 50% of the population of Europe. Destroyed the agriculture. Then they have to search for the new trade route. So it was a push factor for that they have to search for the new trade routes. Next, the Black Disease also led to the Renaissance and Reformation. I'm just giving you very quickly why, because this is not a part of modern history. Now, Black Disease led also to the Renaissance and Reformation. You can imagine in the corona pandemic, when people see people dying in front of them, their belief from the God, from the churches reduces. People no longer believe in God, or the atheism increases. The rise of the atheism, rise of these protest movements within the religion comes especially at the time. For example, the Black Diseases, the World War I, World War II. The people leave the faith in the God. They don't have any faith in the God. And when people become secular, it gives rise to Renaissance and Reformation. Right? That led to Renaissance and Reformation. The lack of religion, more open to scientific discovery, more open to reason, led to innovation, imagination, creativity, and scientific discovery, and led to the new trade routes. So new accomplishments were done, new inventions came, which helped for the trade routes and sea routes, and that you must have read all in your colonialism. You will read in your colonialism. Then one more problem, or let's see more problem. After the fall of the Constantinople, the trade was doing well before it. But after it, the Ottomans became intermediaries. They wanted more tax, more tributes, and sometimes they have blocked it because of the religious purpose. So land route became very obsolete. Land routes also have the challenges, such as they have to very endurance. You need a lot of endurance. A lot of violence can happen on the trade route, right? A lot of people, small, for example, someone has captured, this is a trade route. Someone has captured this territory. Now give us tribute, then I will let you pass. So a lot of challenges were there on this trade route. While the sea route was very open, very democratic. No one was claiming any sea route. So it was a way for the people to go towards the sea route. Then there was a pull factor as well. What was the pull factor? Because India has a very mystic image. that there is an island in an Orient, very far away land, like, and there is an island where a lot of spices are there. So India, through the knowledge that has come over the years from the books that have come to India, you must have read in your art and culture that from India, a lot of books through Arabia went to Europe, right? So they knew about that place named India is there, but they didn't know exactly about it. So there was a mystic image around India, that India is one place that is there, and we have to go for it. We have to search for it. We have to search for the spices, for the gold that is there, right? Golden sparrow that is there in India. Then there was a spirit of God, gold, and glory. God, we all understand. Gold, we all understand. For the money, the colonialism they went. For the God. Now the colonialism was driven by three factors, mainly three factors: God, glory, and gold. Gold we understand for money. God was also because people feel that it is their mission to spread Christianity across the world. So the missionaries, especially the missionaries, so as to spread this Christianity, went across the border. Right? Then we have the gold. So God we understood, missionaries, sorry. Glory. So you must have read the white man's burden. So the white man took upon themselves that no, we have to civilize the other countries as well. India is there, but they are not civilized. So we have to civilize them. Plus, having more colonies were a symbol of the respect, a symbol of the pride. So that was the glory. Next, more factor why European came, because the means became easy. Means from this period, the scientific discoveries, the means became easy. The stock companies, the chartered companies, the means became easy, right? So these means become very easy for the Europeans to come to India, right? So these are the reasons why European came to India. Now let us see a bit about Black Death. Now one thing, as I will mention in the introduction session as well, I have mentioned that I'll be using a lot of Wikipedia information, because modern history, if you want to really serve the purpose of the UPSC, you have to go beyond what is written in your normal textbooks. You need to develop one habit of going on the Google and searching about the things, right? Let us understand this. So that was I have discussed that how bubonic plague led to the Italian Renaissance, because the people faith in the God all reduced, right? Then around 75 to 200 million people died. Around 30 to 60% of the Europe's population died. You can see the date also, 1357 to 1351, right? So this was the bubonic plague, or known as the Black Death, and because of which it has given a lot of impetus for Renaissance, for Industrial Revolution, and a lot of things, right? That is relevant for your modern world history purposes. Now coming back to our discussion. So we have discussed why the Europeans have come to India. All these people came to India. What were the factors which has led them to come to India? Now let us start the story of the first one, that is the Portuguese. So we will see the story of the Portuguese in India, right? They were the first to come and the last to leave. You need to remember that. They were the first to come in India and last to leave. When they finally left in 1962 from Goa, when they finally left, Operation Vijay was conducted, right? Okay. So let us see. Let us see something about the Portuguese colonialism as well. What Portuguese did with respect to their colonialism, right? So first, they in India, they were the first to come and the last to leave, right? Let us start the story from 1453, from the fall of the Constantinople. We have seen that after the Constantinople, Constantinople fell, then there was a search, there was a catalyst that we have to search for the roots. Then, very next year, you can see the Pope has said to the Prince Henry, he was the prince, his name was Henry the Navigator. The Pope has given him the right that go ahead and go for the sea route, sea travel, right to navigate to see the distant shores of Orient. Orient means the Indians and the Far East, the Chinese, the Indians, like that. The idea was, first of all, to spread the Christianity. So there was a Pope. When Pope is there, obviously some religious purpose will be there. And secondly, to reduce the Islamic influence. Because now that much area is now Ottomans are going up. From Arabia to Ottoman, these are all the Muslims controlled area now. है ना? Now, before he could have done anything, he died in 1460. But yes, he has given a lot of impetus to this innovation, creativity, to the whole ecosystem he pushed for the next 6 years. Finally, in 1498, Vasco de Gama reached India. Before that, there was one treaty being signed between Spain and Portugal. That was Treaty of Tordesillas. What this treaty was? We don't have to remember all these world history events, but we just need to trace the history, because modern history through stories helps us to understand things. Now, this was the Treaty of Tordesillas. It was a treaty between the Spain and the Portugal. The treaty was that they will draw this line in the map, and they have said go on this area for Portugal and this area will be for Spain, with respect to the colonialism. That this area will be for Portugal and this area will be for Spain. Okay? And this is what they have decided. Okay, go ahead, we will do it. We have divided the empire between among themselves. And that is why the Portuguese, the Vasco de Gama, came to India finally. Now the trade route was blocked. So he came from this to this, Cape of Good Hope, then he came to India. This was the route of the Vasco de Gama. This is the route of Vasco de Gama from Portugal to India. Now let us discuss Portuguese colonization in India. That's again a chronology. Let us understand this whole big picture. Then we'll go step by step. Right. The first visit was done by Vasco de Gama, as we have seen. Vasco de Gama visited India 3 times. So this is one thing you need to keep in mind. There are only 4 to 5 Portuguese, 4 in fact, that you need to keep in mind. That's all. Then there was some Pedro Cabral. He also came, but he has some conflict with the Arabs. He also did some trade, but not very important figure. So leave it. Next visit of the Vasco de Gama came in 1502. Then the first factory was established at Cochin. The second was at Kunnur. Then in 1503, the Portuguese king sitting here has said that we are having whatever the territories that are there in Portugal, the king has the direct authority over those possessions, direct control over the possessions. Imagine, we will see when the British, it will be done after a long time. In the British, what they will do, British will give a lot of authority to these companies. Go ahead and trade. Just give us profit. The king has nothing to do with the interference with, nothing. But here the king has said, no, I have all the authority over the direct control over the Portuguese position. And hence they started appointing the viceroys, the Portuguese viceroys. The first one was important, that is the Francisco de Almeida. First one and the second one, that is the Alfonso de Albuquerque. So these are 2 important viceroys that are there for Portuguese in India, right? So they did the most of the work. Then after it, there was a period of vacuum. In between, Vasco de Gama visited for the 3rd time. He himself became the viceroy. In 1524, we will see all these things. And then became the last one who was significant, that is Nino de Cunha in 1529-38. And after that, the Portuguese, no important significant viceroy was there. And the last one was, who was dragged out in 1962, was Manuel Antonio Silva. You don't have to remember his name also. So what are the four people that you need to keep in mind? Are these four. The first one is Vasco de Gama, obviously. The second one is Francisco de Almeida. Next is Alfonso de Albuquerque. And next is Nino de Cunha. So these are the four people that you need to keep in mind. Okay? Chalo. Let's see the first one. Vasco de Gama. Very objectively, let's understand. So first, he started the visit. He reached the Calicut on 21st May 1498. He was held by a Gujarati businessman. He was welcomed by the Zomorins. Who are the Zomorins? Zomorins were a small kingdom that is there in the Kozhikode, nowadays Kozhikode. He made around 60 times profit. Now, a lot of you from Kerala must be having a lot more facts with respect to Vasco da Gama, because you can see a lot of Portuguese influence, especially in the cities such as Kozhikode and all. You must be knowing a lot of history, whatever is being taught here. And remember, that is your key asset. That is your really key asset. So 60 times more profit they have earned, Vasco da Gama, and when he returned, the glories of India, the amount of money he has made, and how everything was so good. Then he came back India, and again in 1502, he expanded the trade to spices, cinnamon, peppers, more. He established the factories which were known as the Fittorias. So remember, Fittoria means factories. So established factories were known as the Fittorias. Maybe some different pronunciation in Portuguese, but this is a Portuguese term for the factories. The third visit he has done when he became the viceroy in 1524, and then he died in India also. He died in Cochin, then shifted to Goa. His body was shifted to Goa. So this much information is relevant for Vasco da Gama, and if any other information comes in the form of the question, I will include that into the questions. Okay? So Vasco da Gama came 3 times. First time directly into Calicut. He was initially held by the Zomorins. Then Zomorins were not happy with Portuguese. We will see how. Then the second visit came in 1502, and the third visit came in 1524. He was the most famous Portuguese now. Even the people who don't read modern history know about the Vasco da Gama. Sabko pata hai Vasco da Gama. Everybody knows that who is Vasco da Gama, right? Now, let's quickly see some of the terms. So it is the Kozhikode in Kerala, that is the Zomorins. So Zomorins are basically hereditary monarchy, the kingdom of the Kozhikode on the Malabar coast. So earlier the Chera kingdom was there in the Kerala, in this region. After the Cheras, they dissolved, then became small kingdoms. First is Zomorin, where the Vasco da Gama has landed in 1498. Initially, they helped us, but after it, when they started to establish their dominance, then Zomorins went against the European powers. Now, then final story of the Zomorins was that Hyder Ali, we will see later on, but don't get confused. Later on, Hyder Ali got the Kozhikode, and finally British, when they have beaten the Mysore, they have taken the Zomorins back from the Kozhikode, from the Mysore, and then these people became pensioners. These monarchs became pensioners of the company. That's it. So if you don't get the last part, don't worry. This part, hai na? If you have not read about Hyder Ali and all, don't worry. Let's go ahead. So just remember it like till here only. Next is Francisco de Almeida. He क्या बोल रहे हैं? What he is saying that I am the first one. First one what? He became the first viceroy. Because in 1503, the king has said all the territories that are there in the India are my territories. So he was initially sent for the 3 years. He built forts and factories. He consolidated the Portuguese position, and he destroyed. His aim was to destroy the Muslim trade, because Muslim trade was the competition to the Portuguese trade. Importantly, he established this blue water policy. That is, if we have to do the trade in India, if we have to be getting a lot of money from India, we must have a naval supremacy. We must have a naval supremacy in Asia, in the water, and hence he got for a blue water policy. He led to construction of a lot of Fort Enjediva, that is in Goa, right? Fort St. Angelo, that is in Kerala. Then very important battles have been fought, that is Battle of Diu. In fact, that is said to be one of the greatest naval battles that is there. Greatest in the sense it established the Portuguese naval supremacy in India. It was a battle between the Portuguese versus the joint forces of some Muslim forces. Okay, so this was what Francisco de Almeida. He was the first Portuguese viceroy. He was sent initially for 3 years, then served to 1 more year. Then he built forts and factories in India, obviously. Then blue water policy. This is important that you need to keep in mind. Then he built some forts and very important Battle of Diu. We will see very quickly. So he himself lost his life while going back. Before he could return to Portugal, he lost his life in Cape of Good Hope, 1510. His own son died in one of the battles in India, and he was the first governor and the Portuguese of the Portuguese state in India. If you talk about Battle of Diu everybody knows, right? Daman and Diu, the Union territories currently. So it was fought in 1509, and it marks the beginning of the European dominance over the Asian seas that would last till the Second World War. Because after the World War II, what was the event? That was the Suez Canal crisis, which led to the decline or the final annihilation of the British as the world power. It is still a power, but as a world power, the US has replaced the British especially after the Suez Canal crisis, that you will read in your world history. Now, NJ Island is there in the southern Goa, right? Islands of Tranquility, that is, you can see NJ Diva Island. Okay? Now, these islands are also very important for our naval security, for maritime security, right? So, this is Fort NJ Diva. Then comes the second, sorry. Then comes the second viceroy, that is the Alfonso de Albuquerque. He was the real founder of the Portuguese Empire in India. He came to India before he became the governor in 1503. Finally, he became the viceroy in 1509. He established bases overlooking entrance to the sea. That means he made sure that a lot of entrances, very important sea lanes of communication, that is Strait of Hormuz, Strait of Malacca, the Spice Island. That is your homework. Where is Spice Island is your homework. Please do these homeworks. In these courses, I will try to give you a lot of homework as well. If you'll do those homeworks, you will benefit a lot. Okay? Chalo. So Spice Islands, they want to establish their dominance over these, or make sure that they have the authority over these. Okay? So they need to establish bases that you can imagine, you can connect to the present time when we are talking about the India as a net security provider. When we are talking of India having the maritime, the Sagar Yojana, the Sagar Umbrella Yojana, the India's Indo-Pacific vision, all these you can see the historical context tracing back to this period. He acquired, very importantly, why he is said to be the real founder, because he acquired Goa from the Sultan of Bijapur in 1510. He had the policy of war, piracy and plunder. They were also established themselves, the Portuguese also established themselves as the sea pirates. They used to do a lot of plundering and all these things. He captured Daman and Diu, Salets and Bassein and Hooghly as well. Daman and Diu location you know, right? Then you have the Salsets and Bassein, the Bassein that is there and Salset that is there. Right, these two places you can see here, and then you have the Hooghly. Everybody knows Hooghly in West Bengal. So he went from the western flank to the eastern flank. Okay, right. In fact, these were the golden periods of Portuguese in India. Then also Alfonso de Albuquerque, we can also see the policies such as some social policies. For example, social consolidation he has done. He has abolished sati. So whenever he has ruled, he has abolished sati. That sati will not be done there. Next, because one of the problem with the Portuguese was they are very few in numbers. So he said that the Portuguese should marry the Hindu girls a lot. So the numbers of the Hindu girls will increase. The number of the Portuguese will increase. So new Portuguese culture, the more Portuguese values will go. The child of the Portuguese man and the Hindu wife will be Portuguese, like that. Then diplomatically, he had a very good relations with the Vijayanagar Empire, especially Krishna Deva Raya. He sent embassies. So Firar Lewis was a person who was an ambassador to this Krishna Deva Raya, to the Vijayanagar Empire. He, because, and why there was a good diplomacy, because he also did not like this Delhi Sultanate, the Bahmani kingdoms, the Muslim rurals, and the Vijayanagar Empire also had a conflict. So enemy of my enemy is my friend. That was the philosophy. He also supplied the European horses to the Vijayanagar Empire. If you see, for example, that is why it is said that these regions that were there were the Vijayanagar Empire, were the friendly areas of the Portuguese. These were the areas which were friendly to the Portuguese, the green ones. The yellow one, the light green one, these are the areas which they were having their influence in these areas. Hooghly, you can see this area. Later on, obviously, all of the areas were taken up, but these are the areas where they have the dominance throughout within the complete journey they had in India. Within that time, these are the places where they left their marks. Okay, let's go ahead. The last one, though in between we have seen the period of vacuum for 15 years, almost 15 years, from 1515 to 1529. In between, Vasco de Gama came, as we have read earlier. He became the viceroy, uneventful period. Then came the Nino de Cunha. Now, Nino de Cunha was the last important one that we have to remember. So he also expanded the Portuguese colony. In fact, the earlier, you see, there are two things. First, there is a conquest, then there is a colony. First, you need to conquest it, then you make it a colony. You can plunder and you can come back. But when you decide to settle, you establish a small administration there. You start establishing churches there. Then you have made that a colony. Right? Earlier, these people, before governor generals, what they have done? They have established the conquest period. For example, Goa was established by the Albuquerque, but the places of Bassein, Diu, some places of Bombay were established by this Nino de Cunha. That is why he is important. He was also the one who shifted the capital from Cochin to Goa. So Goa was captured by the second one, the real founder, right, from the rural of Bijapur. Then the capital shifted from Cochin to Goa under the Nino de Cunha, right? And he attempted to expand the increase of the Portuguese influence in the Bengal by setting many Portuguese national with Hooghly as an headquarter. So a lot of Portuguese a lot of human resource he has sent to this Kolkata, Hooghly. Now the things that made things easy for the Portuguese. So what are the favorable conditions for the Portuguese to establish themselves in India? So the northern part was divided into small powers. The Mughals were there, but still the infighting always, someone is fighting with the other. Even within the Mughal kingdom, one is fighting with the other. So they are always busy with themselves. So not a big unified power was there. Then in the Deccan, Bahmani kingdom was breaking up. All these things you must have read in the medieval history. So Bahmani kingdom was breaking up. So there was an opportunity. There was a gap. There was a power vacuum that was left, that they have exploited. Then the military innovations and the naval supremacy that they have shown, it was never seen before. For example, Battle of Diu, the naval supremacy that the Portuguese have shown. For example, they used to have the guns that were mounted on the ship. So when they have guns mounted on the ship, they can use the guns very effectively to establish their dominance, and that's what they did. Then inability of the Mughals to develop the strong navy. Mughals have a very poor navy. They have only the dominance over the lands. Over the seas, they were weak. Then southern India mostly were outside the influence of the Mughals. They also established the good relationship with the Vijayanagar Empire. They exploited the fight between the Vijayanagar Empire and the Mahabani kingdom, right? And because of which it was easy for Portuguese to get into India and establish themselves in India. Along with that, their religious policies were also very aggressive religious policies. And for that, they have to later on suffer some backlash as well. A lot of backlash. For example, so their arrival, you can see the Pope has sent, right, in the 1454. The Pope has sent Pope has said that to the Prince Henry, the navigator, that go ahead and go to these Orient lands. So the first of all, the zeal, the motivation, the catalyst were the promote Christianity. Promotion of the Christianity was the main motivation. They followed an intolerant policy towards the Muslims, and later on they have the intolerant policy towards the Hindu also. So they persecuted these Muslims, they persecuted these Hindus. So these Muslims and the Hindus have to convert to Christianity so as to avoid this persecution. In fact, it is said they were about to convert Akbar as well. You see, Akbar was very much interested into knowing about the theology of the Christianity, what Christianity means, the values it stands for, what is the views of the Christianity on the creation of the world. So Akbar was interested in these debates. Ibadat Khana, you must have read it. So he invited these people, these priests, 3 times. And it is said that they made a good impression on Akbar. And a lot of scholars say that Akbar was about to convert to Christianity, but did not happen. So in 1579, then in the 1583, then in 1592, right? In 1595, sorry, 3 missions were there that were sent to Akbar. Ki acha theek hai, we'll talk to you, we'll understand you, we'll make you understand what the Christianity means. So they have a very aggressive religious policy. They used to convert people very aggressively by any means, maybe by persuasion, maybe by threat, maybe by coercion, like this. Okay, but when the Akbar died, because Akbar was very famous, very much interested in theology, but when Akbar died, his son came, Jahangir, and then Shah Jahan. They knew that these people, because they were the devout Muslim, they were not very keen on theology. If you are very devoted to one religion, you won't be interested in the theology of the other religion, unless until you are a rationalist and you want to know more about the world, something like that. So Jahangir and this Shah Jahan said, no, these people are only and only there to exploit us, to make us convert, and we will not let this happen. We cannot let this happen. And hence there was a backlash by the sons, and the backlash was seen in Bengal. In Bengal, first of all, in the Jahangir reign also. So what the Portuguese have done, they have lifted the 2 slaves girls that belonged to Mumtaz Mahal and were not released even after it was known to be Portuguese. So what they used to do, it was I don't know whether it's a fake news of that time or it was a true news, but it was said that the Portuguese missionaries used to do what? They used to kidnap these orphan kids, and they used to convert them to Christianity. They used to coerce people into Christianity, and the Muslims, these Mughals, said that enough is enough. So Jahangir, and after this Shah Jahan, has sent the governor of the Bengal, that is the Qasim Khan. He has said, go ahead and teach a lesson to Portuguese, and that has given a death blow to the Portuguese in Bengal. Okay? So Portuguese were attacked, massacred, and Hooghly was seized for 3 months. The Portuguese surrendered only after a huge loss of 10,000 lives. 4,000 were made prisoners, were given an option to either convert to Islam or face lifelong imprisonment. So obviously they were the devout Muslim, and they said that live and let live won't work, and especially if you are doing the active convergence of the people to Christianity, and this will not be tolerated. And this became one of the part of the decline of the Portuguese and India. We will read about the Portuguese and the British conflict more when we'll talk about the British. So how they lost to British in the Battle of Solihull, right, in 1612. We have read how in 1630 Shah Jahan has effectively has taken over these people, has delivered a death blow to these people in Bengal. And then what is the story with the Maratha, we'll see. In the Maratha also taken from them the Basin and the Salisate that they have been given, that they have acquired previously, as we have read. So Maratha have taken these territory, they have taken these territory, they were left with a very few territory, that is Goa, Daman and Diu, and Dadra and Nagar Haveli. So they are left with these territories only, and finally in 1961 Operation Vijay, and that also gone, 61-62. So this is how the Portuguese decline. Now comes the question, what were the other factors that led to their policy? One factor we have seen, that is their religious policy. What were the other factors that led to the decline or the coming of the Portuguese rule to an end? So, first, the emergence of the powerful dynasties. We have seen it was easy for the Portuguese to establish themselves when there were no major important powerful dynasties were there, right? Now we have the major powerful dynasties in Egypt, the Persia, the Marathas in India. So when you have the very strong authorities in these places, then they start persecuting you. You cannot continue your trade. They will start interfering in your trade. They will start punishing you. So that is why the Portuguese were brought down. Then the religious policies were way too aggressive. If you do these things on a very small scale, then that's fine. But you're doing it at a very huge scale, you're directly converting the people. This is wrong. Then the dishonest trade that they used to do, we will see. So they used to do this dishonest trade. Then discovery of Brazil was also a very important factor. When the Brazil was discovered, they found that we have another opportunity to exploit. So when you have two opportunities, your mind goes away from the first one. So they said, okay, India mein koi baat nahi, nothing in India, we'll go ahead and occupy Brazil. Then the monopoly of the knowledge they had, the naval supremacy, the military innovations, है ना, that how they conquest India, all these were not limited to them now. Now all the knowledge, these knowledge were known to the other European powers also. Learning from the Portuguese experience, they have made their weapons, their innovation far better. Hence, they were not exclusive to the Portuguese. Then the Dutch and the English have the more compulsion to expand because of the location they had, a lot of problems they were facing internally, push for the colonialism that was there. Then the fall of the Vijayanagar Empire. When the Vijayanagar Empire fell, they have lost an ally. Plus the port of Goa, which was the major port at the time of the Vijayanagar Empire. Through Vijayanagar Empire, they used to do a lot of trade because it was a very prosperous state. But when these empire died, trade declined. When trade declined, their income declined. The Portuguese income declined. Then there were weak successor after the Albuquerque because he was a very strong leader. But after him, very poor successors have come, not good leadership. And that was because of the reasons from the home government. Now, as we have seen in 1503, the Portuguese king has said that these are all my territories that are there in India. But they started neglecting the officials who are working in India. When you start neglecting the officials, you'll give them the less salary. Why they will work for you? They will say, okay, that's fine. We won't increase our. They don't have any motivation to increase the territory because in the in their home they're not respected. They're not paid money. So how it will happen? In the society, and the power was also dominated by the aristocrats, not merchants. The society and the power, when it started dominated by the aristocrats, then it became a challenge. Because when the merchants are there in the power, power means when they directly influence the king and the decision makers, then the policies will be for ease of doing business. ठीक? The same problem we will see with the French also. When the merchants are power, king, they will say the king go for the ease of doing business. But when these aristocrats will be there, they won't be interested in this ease of doing business because they don't have a direct impact on it. But when the merchants start controlling the kings and the power makers, that happened in the British. When they start doing so, a lot of merchants were also the part of the parliament in the British. And hence, they were able to give a lot of freedom to the East India Company. Right? So these are the reasons. Let us revise few of them. So emergence of the powerful dynasty in Egypt, Persia and the North India. The Maratha also captured this Seleucid and Basine, we have seen, 1739. Then religious policy, we have seen, it led to the political fears, right? It made Hindus also resentful, so it started getting lack of support from the people also. People also did not like, a lot of people do not like this conversion, especially the coercive conversions. The dishonest trade that they used to do. So they were known as the sea pirates. They earned a notary for the sea pirates, that they are the sea pirates. So this policy of piracy and this cartage system, we will see. So they used to issue these passes to the people. If you have this pass, then you'll go. Imagine in the lockdown period, if you don't have the pass, when we experience the lockdown period, if you don't have the pass, you cannot go. Similarly, the Portuguese started issuing those licenses. because they have the naval power, and because of which it led to a lot of resentment among the people. Those who were earlier not paying the money, doing the sea trade freely, for example, but now they have to pay the money because of this Carthage system. Now they don't like it. Then discovery of the Brazil we have seen. ठीक है, चलो. And also after some time Spain and the Portugal also for the meanwhile became one kingdom, and that also reduces the motivation to work hard. Now Carthage system, it was a naval trade license or the pass issued by the Portuguese in the Indian Ocean in the 16th century. ठीक है. Carthage means basically letter. Carthage is again a Portuguese term that means letter. ठीक है. So these kind of letters were issued and they have to give money to the Portuguese to let them pass. Now last section of the today is how the Portuguese have influenced India politically, economically, socially and culturally. Let us see one by one. First we talk about economically. Right? First we talk about politically, sorry. So politically how they have impacted India. So they heralded the European era in India. The emergence of the naval power that is there. Right? We have seen this Battle of Diu, we have seen how they used to establish this Carthage system. Then after it all, why British also won? Because of the naval power they had. Then they were too few in number. In fact, their political importance is very small because of the very few numbers they have, the territory that they control, very less as compared. If we see from the hindsight, if we see from the present, so their political influence is very less. But however, they were very few in numbers, but as they have the no large territories, ज़्यादा लोग नहीं है, when they don't have a lot of human resource, how will they control it? But they were wise enough to confine to islands and the forts. For example, Daman and Diu. For example, Goa. For example, Dadra and Nagar Haveli. They are very wise that we will control these islands. And when we'll control these islands, we can control a lot of things. ठीक? Then they induced power. When then they were able to influence these Zomorans, for example. So when they were able to control these people, and this is their political significance, है ना? Then they introduced the viceroy system that we can later on see in the British system as well. Then the armed naval trade. Before them, the naval trade used to happen, but it was not an armed naval trade. They used to have these military innovations that they have done, the body armor, the firing from the ships. All these things have made the Portuguese very significant, militarily and politically. Then if we talk about the economically, I am saying the politically significant in the sense that they were not as much politically significant as English or as French. But yes, they were political significance, but it was less. If we talk about the economic significance, then they established the new links of trade and commerce. The sea trade, for example, the sea link. So that was good. This one is important. They introduced into a lot of cash crops because they have the empires also in the Latin America. So from Latin America, from Mexico, from Latin America, a lot of things have come to India. Tomato, potato, corn, tobacco, potato, corn, chili, pineapple, papaya, cashew, guava. All these things have come into India from the Portuguese influence. They introduced the coin that is cruzado, right? Cruzado, right? And these coins were used in the neighborhood areas as well. That much significance were these coins. Allies were there, right? Bahmani. In the Bahmani kingdom also they were used. Just like, for example, Indian rupee is used in Nepal also. Okay? Then if we talk about the social impact, then we have seen that few of the things that we already seen. Let's summarize it. So for example, they have abolished the sati. The number were small. They encouraged the mixed marriage. So the new Indo-Portuguese or Goanese culture it is called. Now in Goa we can see a lot of heritage from the Portugal. Society and the government was organized on the rigid racial lines. There was a father Heras later on the 16th century, 17th century. He studied for the, not 16th, 17th century, but 19th century. He studied for the Indus Valley civilization. So these are the contributions of the people, Portuguese people socially. Establishment of all the schools and the college that you must have seen. So many saints' name and all these things, all the schools and colleges that have been opened. They have destroyed a lot of temple, as we have seen later on. First Islam they have persecuted, then the Hindus they started persecuting. So they destroyed a lot of temples and erected the churches there. If you talk about the cultural impact, and this is very important, that you will also read in the art and culture, है ना, very importantly. So they introduced into India this Iberian style of architecture. So initially they established the trading ports and the warehouses, because initially their main focus was to establish the similar way that everyone has done. First economic center, then you establish your territory, then you do the cultural part. Then you have to fortify, then they remodeled these to the fortified town along the coastline, because their number was low. They're working on an island. So they will create a lot of towns, a lot of fortified forts they have created. For example, there is a fort in the Diu Fort. Next, they introduced the concept of the patio house and the barbecue style, which represented the strength of the church, and a lot of things that they have done that have a dramatic effect. So Portuguese also influenced our culture a lot. Not as much as the British or as much as the Dutch, but yes, in the areas that are there. For example, Goa, Daman, Diu, there we can find the influence. For example, a lot of churches are there. Church of Saint Anne in Goa. So this is known as the Baroque style. Then we have the St. Paul's Church, the same style. Then there is a St. Cathedral Church in Goa. Then we have the Basilica of Dom Jesus in Goa. So these are the few famous churches in the culture. You need to remember them. So that's it for the Portuguese. So this much is relevant for the Portuguese. Let us have some questions. And we will have a lot of questions. In fact, we'll have around, including the previous year and the learn through questions, we'll have around 300 plus questions to learn with. So let's start. Very easy questions. You'll find these questions easy now, because especially after the lecture you are seeing these questions. I'm telling you, you'll see, sir, these questions are not tough and all these things, but this becomes question very significant when you finally see these questions into the exam. Let us see few questions. The potato crop was introduced into the India by British, Dutch, Portuguese and French. Very easy. Portuguese, right? So this is Portuguese. You can stop the video and you can try to answer the question as well, just like we do in the current affairs. And plus, I'll be doing a lot of cross-referencing from the current affairs as well. Next is the Blue Water Policy introduced by which Portuguese leader? Now you see. Which one? The Almeida. He was the one who introduced this Blue Water Policy. Let's have the third question. I think this is the... I think this question we'll see later on. Let's cut this question. One question is, Krishna Deva Raya maintained friendly relations with whom he maintained friendly relationship? We know he maintained friendly relationship with Portuguese. Very quickly, it's easy questions. Which of the following factor contributed to the decline of the Portuguese in India? Rise of the Maratha, religious policy of the Portuguese, rivalry with the British and the Dutch companies. We have seen Maratha, we have seen this, and the rivalry we all know. We'll see more about the British and the Portuguese rivalry. So all the options are right. And the last question is, which among the following introduced the cashew, put, nut, pineapple, tobacco in India? That is again the Portuguese. Now a very small sample set we are doing the questions, and that's why they make look easy. But if you see after the modern history, I'll give you these questions again. They will become a bit tough. But I want to prepare you for this. You'll have the PDF of the session also with you. Please keep on revising these questions. This question will really help you in the prelims examination. Okay. So that's the end of the session 1. Let's revisit a few things. So we started discussion the twin challenge the British have to face. The first would drag the other Europeans out and fight with the other princely states. Then we have seen the preparing for the colonialism that was there. So we have seen the timelines for the Roman Empire and the English, what was happening at the same time in the Europe, the age of Renaissance, Reformation, after the Dark Ages, after the Black Death. Then we have seen the Roman Empire and the Ottoman Empire when they were at their peak, how the Roman Empire led to the Ottoman Empire, and how the your 1453 event was very significant, very seminal. Then why Europeans came to India, then Portuguese, whole colonialism of the Portuguese, then Portuguese in India. Then we have read about these two people, Almeida and Alfonso. Then the third one, that is Nino de Cunha. 4 people in the Portuguese that you must know. Then how they about to come to India and how they influence the culture in India. Culture, political, economy and social influence. So that's all for today. Your homework is, first of all, what you can do, see these Spice Islands, go on the art and culture book of Nitin Singhani and read about the Portuguese influence more. Search for the more styles that are there. What is patio houses? Search for the internet. What is patio houses? Right? See the few churches more, and revise this PDF. Revise this lesson before we went to the second session. Okay, so that's the end of the first session. See you all the next time. Bye bye for now. Thank you.